Good afternoon. My name is Gordana Racic and I work as assistant professor at University from Sremska Kamenica, situated in Republic of Serbia. Today I will give you a lecture named Basics of Ecology and Agroecology. This lecture is prepared within the project called Agroheritage, and University is a partner of this project, namely Faculty of Agriculture. University is integrated university which consists of 7 faculties, and I work at the Faculty of Ecological Agriculture. Today's lecture will give you a brief introduction and description of ecology, ecosystems, dynamics of ecosystems, natural cycles, and various types of biotic and abiotic interactions, as well as examples of natural ecosystems. And it will give the definition and the main difference between ecology and agroecology, as well as it will define 10 basic elements of agroecology. So firstly, let's say that ecology is a study of interaction between living organisms and its physical environment. It studies populations, communities, and ecosystems. Ecosystems represent a structural and functional unit of ecology, encompassing complex interaction between biotic and abiotic components. As we all know, living organisms cannot live isolated from their non-living environment because non-living environment actually provides materials and energy for survival of the living organisms, which are divided on producers and consumers. Thus, ecosystems actually are parts of nature where living organisms interact among themselves and with their physical environment. Main ecological factors that affect ecosystems are biotic and biotic factors. Abiotic factors present the effect of non-living chemical and physical factors on ecosystems, and biotic actually are defined as the effect of living components to each other. Besides this division, we cannot forget the effect of humans to the environment. So we have one more factor which we have to consider, and it is called anthropogenic factor. And actually from this factor, namely agroecology raised as a special study in the terms of ecological interactions. Ecosystems are divided, as I previously said, on abiotic and biotic components. When we are speaking about abiotic components, we speak about climatic and edaphic components that are affecting ecosystems, and we are speaking about biotic components. It is divided on producers, consumers, and decomposers. Edaphic factors with emphasis special emphasis is given on soil. Because soil is really complex complex systems, and it contains of a mixture of weather rock fragments which are altered by soil mineral particles, organic matter, and living organisms. It is very important because it provides nutrient, water, home, and structural growing medium for organisms. Because soil is actually formed from minerals. Soil pH is very important because it represents a living matter place of living and biotic when we are connected it with biotic components or especially with decomposers due to different pH different decomposers can be found in different soil types according to the pH. Furthermore, when speaking about climatic factors, which are here divided on rain, light, wind, and temperature, we are actually speaking about the atmosphere. Atmosphere provides organisms with carbon dioxide, which is necessary for photosynthesis, and oxygen, which is necessary for respiration. The processes of evaporation, transpiration, and precipitation cycle water between the atmosphere and the Earth's surface. So solar radiation is actually used in ecosystems to heat the atmosphere and to evaporate and transpire water through the atmosphere. Light, when we're speaking about light, we are speaking about sunlight, which is also necessary for the process of photosynthesis. Water is the medium by which mineral nutrients enter and are translocated in the plants. So it is necessary for the maintenance for leaf turgidity, and it is required for photosynthetic chemical reactions. Plants and animals receive their water from the earth's surface and the soil. So the original source of this water is actually precipitation from the atmosphere. Abiotic components are connected with biotic components, which actually represents the living organisms, including plants, animals, and microorganisms. So according to that, we have this division, which is written on producers, consumers, and decomposers. This division is actually made mainly on the food they used for their living. So producers are green plants which have chlorophyll, and with the help of chlorophyll they trap solar energy and change it into chemical energy of carbohydrates using simple inorganic compounds, namely it is water and carbon dioxide. And this process is known as photosynthesis. As green plants manufacture their own food, they are known as autotrophs. The chemical energy stored by the producers is utilized partly by the producers for their own growth and survival, and the remaining is stored in the plant parts for the future use. However, we have heterotrophs. We can see that heterotrophs can be divided in primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary consumers. As we all know, the animals lack chlorophyll, so they are unable to synthesize their own food. Primary consumers or first order consumers or herbivores, there are actually the animals which feed on plants. So they are called herbivores. For example, it's a rabbit, deer, goat, cattle, etc. Secondary consumers or primary carnivores, they use as their own food primary consumers. Tertiary consumers, they are large carnivores, and for their food they use secondary consumers. For example, it can be wolf, which are fed with secondary consumers such as cats, fox, snakes, and others. And quaternary consumers, it's the largest carnivores. Actually, they're called omnivores, and they are fed with tertiary consumers and are not eaten up by any other animals such as lions and tigers. And decomposers. Decomposers are bacteria and fungi, and they are important because they break down the dead organic material of producers and consumers for their food and release to the environment the simple inorganic and organic substances produced as byproducts of their metabolisms. After this division, we have to say that ecosystems are actually very complex dynamic system, and their function is based on five main processes, which is productivity, decomposition, physical function, biological function, and biogeochemical function. Some of them I will present later, like energy flow and geochemical cycles. But now I will say just a few sentences about productivity, decomposition, and biological functions. Productivity is actually constant input of solar energy, and it is the basic requirement for any ecosystem to function and sustain. So primary production is defined as the amount of biomass or organic matter which is produced per unit area over a time period by plants during the process of photosynthesis. Then we have decomposition, which is divided on fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, humification, and mineralization. It is connected with decomposers. Decomposers break down complex organic matter into organic substances such as carbon dioxide, water, and nutrients. And as a remaining raw material which stays is dead plants such as leaves, bark, flowers, and dead remains of animals. And then we have physical factor. Here we are speaking about energy flow. The chemical energy of food is the main source of energy required by all living organisms, and this energy is transmitted to different trophic levels along the food chain. This energy flow is based on two different laws of thermodynamics. And it takes place via food chain and food web, which are biological factors. During the process of energy flow in the ecosystem, plants are being the producers absorb sunlight with the help of chloroplasts, and a part of this sunlight is transported into chemical energy and used in the process of photosynthesis. And then this energy is stored in various organic products in plants and passed on to the primary consumers. Then the plants are served as a food for the herbivores, and they convert chemical energy accumulated in plant products into kinetic energy. Degradation of energy then will occur through its conversion into the heat. So then we have secondary consumers. When these herbivores are consumed by carnivores of the first order, further degradation will occur. And finally, tertiary consumers consume the carnivores, and again, energy will be degraded. So the energy flow is unidirectional in nature. And based on the source of their nutrition or food, organisms actually occupy a specific place in the food chain that is known on their trophic levels. Here, when we come back, we have biological functions of ecosystems, and here we are speaking about food chains, food web, and ecological succession, which are strictly connected to this energy flow. Food chains represent the transfer of food energy from the producers through a series of organisms with repeated eating and being eaten. So we are then speaking about simple food chains. However, they are very rarely found in nature. Mostly we have food webs. When various food chains are interconnected to each other, then it is formed a food web. A food web illustrates all possible transfers of energy and nutrient among the organisms in an ecosystem, whereas food chains traces only one pathway of food. And they are very important in maintaining the stability of an ecosystem. After food webs, we have also this ecological succession. It is a gradual and fairly predictable change in the species composition of one specific area. So during the succession, some species colonize an area more, and then their populations become more numerous, whereas populations of other species decline and even disappear. And we have one more function of ecosystem, which is very important, and it's connected to biogeochemical processes. Biogeochemical processes actually refer to the flow of chemical elements and compounds between organisms and their physical environment. And here we are differentiating nutrient cycles of the major elements such as oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur, which are essential ingredients that make up the organisms. First, we have carbon cycle. Carbon enters into the living world in the form of carbon dioxide, and it's atmospheric. Then it also enters the living world through the processes of photosynthesis as carbohydrates. These organic compounds are then passed from the producers to the consumers, herbivores and carnivores, and this carbon is finally returned to the surrounding medium by the processes of respiration or decomposition of plants and animals by the decomposers. And here we have to mention also the carbon that comes from the anthropogenic sources, such as burning of fossil fuels, and it is also recycled on that way. After carbon, a very important cycle is nitrogen cycle, and it's very complex. There are 5 main processes which are essential for nitrogen cycle. It's nitrogen fixation, which includes atmospheric fixation, industrial fixation, and bacterial fixation. Then we have process of nitrification, assimilation, ammonification, and denitrification. Through nitrogen fixation first process, this process involves a conversion of nitrogen, which is present as gas, into ammonia, a form which can be used by plants. Then we have nitrification. Here we have nitrification. It's a process by which this ammonium ion is converted into nitrates or nitrates by different bacteria such as Nitrosomonas and Nitrococcus bacteria respectively. Then we have the process where these nitrates and nitrates goes to assimilation. In this process, nitrogen is fixed by plants and it is converted into organic molecules such as DNA, RNA, or proteins, and these molecules make the plant and animal tissue. Then we have the process of ammonification. In this process, living organisms produce produce back to ammonia. They produce nitrogenous waste such as urea and uric acid, and these waste products are converted into this inorganic form of ammonia. And then we have the process of denitrification. It's a conversion of nitrates back into the gaseous nitrogen, and this is called denitrification. It is actually reverse of nitrogen fixation. Water cycle or hydrological cycle is the process where water is transferred between the land surface, the ocean, and atmosphere. Here we don't have a starting or the end point. We can start for any point. So, for example, water can be received from the atmosphere on the Earth, and it returns back to the atmosphere through these different processes of evaporation, transpiration, and then it condensates again in the atmosphere and comes back to the soil through the processes of precipitation and come back to the oceans through the processes of precipitation. And one more, which is important, is phosphor cycle. Phosphor is a major constituent of biological membranes, nucleic acids, and cellular energy transfer systems. So many animals actually need large quantities of this element, for example, to make shells, bones, and teeth. As a natural reservoir of phosphor are actually rocks, and when these rocks are watered, then phosphor becomes available in the form of phosphates because it dissolves in soil solution, and then it is absorbed by the roots of the plants. It's important to say that also phosphorus comes into the system and into the nature through the form of fertilizers because it's one of the major components of fertilizers used in agriculture. Also, I forgot to say that, but it's also the case with the nitrogen. So these are the main functions of ecosystems. Ecosystems can be natural and artificial. Natural ecosystem are ecosystems which are found in nature where organisms freely interact with other components and they are divided on terrestrial ecosystems and aquatic ecosystems. In this picture, we see this major division. So natural terrestrial ecosystems are grasslands, forests, and deserts. Forests are ecosystems that have an abundance of flora or plants, and in these ecosystems, a large number of organisms actually live in a small space. However, grasslands are the areas which comprise mainly of the grasses with little numbers of shrubs or trees. And deserts are known as the main vegetation of such regions are shrubs, brushes, and few grasses and trees. We have natural and or aquatic ecosystems which are divided on marine oceans and fresh waters which are lakes, and artificial, the one that are from man sources or man-made, is for example like aquariums or crop fields. When we are speaking about ecosystems, we have to not we cannot forget the ecological pyramids, which are the graphical representation of trophic levels of an ecosystems. The base of each pyramid represent the producers or the first trophic level, while the apex represent tertiary or top level consumers. And we have three types of ecological pyramids that are usually studied. It's pyramid of number, where we have starting from the top level tertiary consumers, secondary, primary, and producers. Here we have a pyramid of biomass, which is divided on zooplanktons and phytoplanktons, and we have pyramid of energy. Again, it's connected with the energy use. We have producers, primary consumers, secondary, and tertiary consumers. During the time, there were various approaches where we have to connect ecology with agriculture, because this human effect on ecosystems raised in the last 100 to 200 years dramatically. The agroecology is discipline which is defined as like a marriage between agriculture and ecology. And it tries to explain understanding and to involve various approaches to solve actual challenges of agricultural production. So it tries to connect, to understand crop ecology in the context of cultivated systems. It gives the description of agriculture in ecological terms. Actually, it can be also defined as ecology of food systems. So the term agroecology means either a scientific discipline, agricultural practice, or it can be defined as a political or social movement. Because through agroecology, we have initially dealt primarily with crop production and protection aspects, but in the recent decades, there are new dimensions such as environmental factors, social, economic, ethical development issues are becoming more and more relevant. And agroecology employs the principles of ecology to study, to understand, and to design agricultural systems. And in terms of this, we are defining 10 basic elements of agroecology. They are defined by Food Agricultural Organization, FAO. Because it is fundamentally different from other approaches of sustainable development. It is based on bottom-up and territorial processes, helping to deliver solutions to local problems. And agroecological innovations are based on co-creation of knowledge, combining science with traditional, practical, and local knowledge of producers. So, through enhancing their autonomy, capacity, agroecology actually empowers producers and communities as key agent of some change. We have here presented 10 elements of agroecology. Starting from diversity. Diversity, like first element, is key to agroecological transition because it ensures food security and nutrition value while conserving, protecting, and enhancing natural resources. The second one, which connects diversity with synergy, is co-creation and sharing of knowledge. It's agricultural innovations tends to respond better to local challenges when they are co-created through participatory processes. And then we have synergy. Synergy building enhances key functions across food systems, supporting production and multiple ecosystem services. Synergy is actually connects efficiency and recycling with resilience. Efficiency we defined as innovative agroecological practice which produce more using less external sources, and it's directly connected with recycling. What is recycling? So more recycling means agricultural production with lower economic and environmental costs. Then we have resilience. On the other hand, it's enhanced resilience of people, communities, and ecosystems is key force for sustainable food and agricultural systems. And so on this side, we see a circular and solidarity economy, which is it reconnects producers and consumers to provide innovative solutions. However, also we have responsible governance, which is explaining that we need effective governance mechanisms at different scales, from local, national to the global ones. And we cannot forget human and social values and culture and food traditions, which are protecting rural livelihoods, equity, and social well-being as essential for sustainable food and agricultural systems, and culture and tradition, which support healthy, diversified, and culturally appropriate foods, diets, through which agroecology contributes to food security and nutrition while maintaining the health of ecosystems. So agroecology leads to one sustainable agriculture. And with this slide, I'm finishing my presentation. I will thank you for your attention with a picture of our university, which, as you can see, is situated next to the Danube River, and with this one bridge, it is connected with the city of Novi Sad, which is second largest city of the Republic of Serbia. So within the university, we have also the student dormitory, restaurant, student hall, and here we have bus stops. So university has a form of a campus where a student can easily follow up the lessons, live here, and are directly connected with the city for their further social student activities. Thank you once again.